Have you ever wondered what a Battlefield game in a VR environment would look like? Being able to reload your weapon by yourself, actually piloting that little bird and shooting the side gunner seat out of the transport helicopter with your own two hands. I've actually thought about this a lot in the past, and it seems there's a new game coming out called Forefront that have just released a trailer, so I thought it might be fun to pick through this trailer, go and see what Forefront's all about, when it's coming out, all the details, so let's get into it. So this one's coming from a studio called Triangle Factory. They've already got a couple of VR games under their belt, namely Hyperdash and Breaches. I haven't played them, but they have a lot of gunplay in there, so surely that experience is going to go a long way when making a VR Battlefield style game. Now obviously this trailer isn't recorded like directly in VR, this is not always what you're going to see, it's a cinematic trailer, but there is nevertheless going to be some first person action gameplay that'll give us a bit of a clue as to how this game will actually play and function in VR. So I was absolutely shocked when I saw this. This is the first map and it takes place in the small Icelandic village of Stöðvarfjörður. So, for those of you who don't know, I actually live in Iceland, and Stöðvarfjörður is a tiny town. So this is the capital here, Reykjavik, where I live in the west, and all the way here over in the east, we have Stöðvarfjörður, which as you can see, is pretty small. Fjörður means fjord in Icelandic, and that's exactly what this inlet of water is here. So they've already got some extra brownie points from me there. So straight away we see a very Battlefield-esque scene here. We've got tanks rolling in with gunner positions on top. There's also some sort of a Humvee or a Jeep there rolling in with somebody on the top gunner, so it looks like you are going to be able to shoot people out of those positions in this game. We've also got a few soldiers here on the ground. One of them has, of course, an RPG on his back, so that would indicate that there is going to be some sort of a class system here. And then we see some of my favorite vehicles from the Battlefield universe, a couple of little birds flying in here. Now, how are these going to work in VR? I'm going to assume you will control the flight of them on the left and the right controller the same way you would on a regular, like PlayStation 5 or an Xbox controller, but you're going to be able to look around the cockpit in VR. For anybody who's played VTOL VR or seen any of the videos I've put up on my channel for that, that's basically like a jet simulator VR. It's probably going to work in much the same way. Now, they obviously have fixed weaponry, so wherever you point them, they're going to fire. But this has me now thinking about attack helicopters. Can you imagine gunning in the attack helicopter in VR? And maybe you can move the 30mm cannon around with your head, with head tracking. That would be so cool, man. So here we actually get a look at some of the soldiers in the game, and what I can assume is the class system. Also looks like there is a transport helicopter just taking off there in the background, but we'll come to that later on. So on the left here, I would say the guy there with the MP5 and the RPG, that would presumably be the engineer class. Then we have the medic class here with the shotgun. Looks like he has some sort of a healing pistol on his hip there, somewhat reminiscent of Falk or even Stinger from Delta Force now as well. Seems to be a bit of a trend that's catching on, doesn't it? Then of course we have the Recon with the AWM sniper, it looks like, and then finally some sort of an LMG there on what I can assume is the support class. So where is the assault class? Well, it could be that the furthermost one to the left isn't an engineer, but it is a support, and they simply get the anti-vehicle weapons. I don't really think it matters what they necessarily call the classes, but it seems that all of the necessary ones are here. It seems that this OR word is like one of the factions that's going to be in the game, and you'll see a little bit later on in the map that it sort of revolves around excavating and stuff like that, so maybe that's one of the backstories to this particular faction. And then here, of course, we see either the assault or the engineer launching an RPG at the tank there. It does blow up in one shot, and there are a lot of scenes in this particular trailer where tanks get one shot, soldiers go down in one bullet, so I'm assuming they've just basically messed around with the code to make that happen for cinematic purposes. Now check this out here. This is a scene of him using the Stinger in game, and I don't think I've ever been as excited to use a Stinger missile in a Battlefield game before. It's largely been regarded as something a little bit cheap and easy to use, but now you're actually going to have to track the target yourself with both your hands presumably and also your headset. So all of a sudden this is looking a way lot cooler. Right here, jumping off the cliffside, classic Damavan Peak moment here as the helicopter flies by. You can see some oil refineries down there below, so this map looks pretty awesome. And now we're on to a brand new map, so the water in this game actually looks really impressive, especially for a VR game. I think a lot of people who are watching this trailer, obviously it's not in VR right now, and you're going to be thinking, well, Ghost, the graphics don't look that fantastic. And you'd be correct, but if you've ever played a game in VR, then you'll know that graphics really don't matter as much as they do when you're playing a normal game, right? The immersivity is just so overwhelming and impressive at times that you really just stop looking at the graphics, and it's all about being able to run the game as well as possible. But we do have jet skis here coming in on the water. Again, this kind of reminds me of one of the Battlefield 4 DLC maps, maybe like Operation Whiteout or something like that. And here we see what seems to be like a rib boat with a gunner at the front there, of course, being operated in VR. And there we see another classic Battlefield stunt as he goes over what is obviously a pre-prepared ramp for that particular rib boat. And then you see here in the background, the rib boat gets absolutely yeeted into this container, and the dude in the background just goes absolutely flying. So it's definitely some classic Battlefield moments there. Now here is one of the things I was hoping we would see in this trailer. Here is some actual first-person footage of somebody gunning in the transport helicopter. And again, can you just imagine using both of those VR controllers, pulling the triggers to squeeze the gun there, but actually aiming it there yourself with both your left and your right hand? Oh, dude, I'm just so excited even talking about this. I could just imagine being in that world. And here we have a look at some of the first-person soldier gameplay. So whilst this is still cinematically shot, I think this is definitely just with the HUD disabled and everything. So it looks like this guy here is using a Glock, and then he takes out the AWM. Just before he snipes that dude in the helicopter, they do a cut, which is absolutely criminal there. How dare you? Here we've got a bit of Scar gameplay with one of the operators as the little bird comes in and absolutely devastates everything. And now check this out. This guy's going up a zip line. And again, this just has me thinking of the possibilities in this game. You can see he's sort of shooting that pistol left, right, and all around him as he goes up the zip line. So presumably, the way this is going to work in game is you use one of the buttons on the controller to engage on the zip line, but then you can of course use your headset to look around below you and then use your hands independently to shoot and aim the pistol as you're going up the zip line. Pretty crazy stuff there. Like, the possibilities in this game are quite mind-blowing, honestly. You can see there's also a suspended shipping crate there on this massive crane. Makes me wonder, is there Levolution maybe in this game? Are you going to be able to trigger that to fall down in some way? Then we get another little shot here of somebody using an optic on a weapon. Can't quite tell what weapon it is. Kind of reminds me of like the G3A3 or something like that, but looks pretty awesome and immersive. You can see obviously by the way this is misaligned with the camera that this is definitely recorded in VR. Next we have a little shot of somebody as a passenger in one of the Humvees, and you can actually lean out of the windows and shoot people as you go by. And then check this out here. We've got an engineer repairing the tank with a left hand, and then while he's repairing the tank, he just takes out the deagle and shoots somebody on the bridge. Oh, I absolutely love it, man. It looks so cool. Now, another map here. This is the third map we've seen so far. This looks a lot to me like Wake Island. This is, I would say, like a clearly ripped off of that horseshoe design, but it's also very reminiscent of Paracel Storm. And there is also a Battlefield 4 DLC map. The name escapes me, but drop it down below in the comments if you guys can remember what that is. And you can see from this wide shot here, there are a couple of helipads on this map, one all the way down in the south and then one over to the west side. So clearly a lot of naval action on this map, a lot of air action as well. Unfortunately, no gameplay to be shown of that one, but like, I'm kind of blown away. This game looks incredibly fun. Now, you might be wondering how many players can actually play in this game. It's going to be 16 versus 16, which for a VR game is actually kind of nuts. Normally, you see much smaller scale stuff like 5 versus 5 or 6 versus 6 because it is hard to accrue that many players. So hopefully this game is actually going to do well enough to get that many players in a single round. But 16 versus 16, everybody in VR, that's going to be absolute madness. Again, it's not the most graphically amazing game by any stretch of the imagination, especially if you compare it to, let's say, the new Battlefield title. But my mind is now racing with the thought of what is going to be possible in VR. Now, this game is coming out in fall this year, 2025, so is it going to clash with the release of the next Battlefield game? I certainly hope not. That may be coming out towards the beginning of next year, so maybe Forefront will get a little bit of a head start. But I would say, being in VR, it's definitely in its own niche there. I know a lot of people don't have VR headsets, and maybe you think, oh, it's not really worth investing in, there aren't enough good VR games. I would say, if you want my opinion on the matter, if you have the money, it is worth the investment. Like, nothing really comes close to VR in terms of immersivity. You really become genuinely lost in the world, sometimes so much so that you're like losing balance and stuff, and I can only imagine that's going to be the case flying it around in a bloody little bird. It's not something you're going to use every day, like when you purchase a peripheral like a mouse and keyboard or a monitor or a new PC part, but it is something that I would say is worthwhile having in your arsenal for whenever a game like this comes along. Personally, I don't have one of the new VR headsets. I've got an old Rift, and it still works fine on Steam, so you could maybe even like pick something up on the cheap. This is not a sponsored video, by the way, guys. I'm not trying to sell VR headsets or even forefront the game. I just thought I'd give out my 2 cents on it if you wanted my opinion. So there you have it. Anyway, leave me yours down below in the comments section, guys. I would be very interested to know what you think about this game. Do you even own a VR headset? Is this something that maybe would encourage you to even pick one up so you can be part of that ecosystem? Let me know in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching the video, though. Have a good one, and don't forget to subscribe for more Battlefield. That's going to be on the way very soon, and I'll see you guys in the next video.